One of the most essential qualities to mature in yourself in your evolutionary journey of self-development is the quality of being and remaining grounded. So, being grounded means several things. Firstly, and this is important, you need to establish firm psychological and emotional boundaries. There is an overwhelming amount of unfiltered or unclarified information and input at the ready for you to consume at every turn of your awareness, especially in our day and age. What I mean by unfiltered or unclarified is that you are being presented with information that is a mixture of partial truths and varying degrees of distortion, misinterpretation, and mistranslation. Bias is usually inherent in the mind and mindsets of every perceiver. Every teacher or speaker or author or leader you encounter can't help but bend information to fit their existing psychological and neural architecture. Very little of what you'll come across is pure information from the highest order of consciousness. It very seldom retains its pure form, its pure coherence and stability in its origin. So there's always a skewing and bending to the information by the very nature of the journey that information, that packet of knowledge, has to make through perspectives that it comes through, which are a culmination of inherited, regurgitated, and obscured maps of reality and self. So, as this pure packet of information, this pure packet of intelligence makes that journey into our dimension of experience, it naturally gets skewed and distorted and morphed or shaped out of its original form. So this means that the information that you're exposing yourself to is as pure and identical to its original form of pure intelligence as the instrument that it has to be sifted through. So the nervous system that it has to come through into our level of conscious communication and communion. So before you set about exposing yourself to innumerable murky influences, you have to establish those firm psychological and emotional parameters for yourself. What kind of influence are you going to open yourself up to energetically, psychologically, and emotionally? What rules will you impose in what you come into interaction with? In the same way, you wouldn't just leave the main entrance of your home open to anyone and everyone. You have to have a standard of allowable entry into your energetic, mental, and emotional fields. So that's one part. A firm decision you make and hold in yourself that says, I am only available and receptive to these kinds of energetic, psychological, and emotional influences. You have to get conscious here. You have to get intentional. You have to get deliberate before you go out and start just unconsciously consuming and integrating one set of distorted perspective after another into your own overall framework of reference for self and world. You always have total and utter choice in what and who you come into relationship with. And you also always have total choice in which layers of information you consume from who and what you interact with. So even though the information you're coming into contact with has not been filtered out for inherited or obscured influences. It hasn't been properly sifted through and sort of made to be coherent and as close to its origin of pure intelligence as possible. You can still be the gatekeeper of your own perspective so that that filtering is happening as you start ingesting, consuming, and digesting this information. So you can say, I'm only interested in accessing the higher order of consciousness that is mixed in this expression here, in this thing that I'm reading, in this thing that I'm listening to, in this thing that I'm watching, and so on and so forth. I like calling this conscious consumption. It communicates to all levels of consciousness within yourself what you are open to. You establish those psychological boundaries. You establish those emotional boundaries. You establish those energetic boundaries and bring a kind of conscious intentionality and deliberate focus into how you interact with information. And this is a really crucial exercise to engage in as you go on about your journey of self-development, self-expansion, the journey of growing and developing your psyche into being able to hold more and more and more complex ideas of self and world. So that's the first aspect of being grounded, establishing those firm boundaries. The second aspect of being grounded that I'll talk about is recognizing and holding in your awareness that your perspective, your intuition, your gut instincts, your higher and broader perspectives are no less than anyone else's. You have to be centered and fully solid in the validity of your own being before you go about and participate in the perspectives of others, no matter how knowledgeable, how different, how wise, how unique, or how glamorous they come across. You have to monitor the tendency in yourself to put someone on some idealized pedestal. Most of us are pretty established masters at the game of not being enough and not being worthy. The moment you make someone else greater than yourself in your own mind, and that's the only place that distinction can be true, is within the boundaries of your own mind. The moment you differentiate yourself as a pupil, as a student, as a follower, you have entered into a dualistic dance of power. You make this assumption in yourself. And it's a socially and culturally inherited assumption for our current system, for our current social, cultural context. You grow up in the family unit and you grow up in a culture where you're told others are the authority of your being, your behavior, and in most cases, your definitions of who you are and what the world is at large. So, this tendency to elevate someone and sort of diminish yourself or silence your own voice or silence your own qualities is a learned calibration of awareness you have to transcend, especially if you're going on that journey of self-evolution where you start sampling one set of ideas after another to try and grow and develop yourself into holding more in your consciousness about who you are and what the world is and so on and so forth. So you have to come into your own power once you reach a certain age of development. And if you didn't master this differentiation from external authority in your teens and in your adolescence, you'll find yourself falling into the trap of power games where you idealize and idolize others with this inherent diminishment of self happening on the other side of your idealization of and idolization of someone else. So you have to be aware of how you're holding yourself in your own awareness in relation to the countless other perspectives you'll come across in your journey of self-development. Never let yourself assume a position of being less than or being inferior to someone else in any way, regardless of what their story is, regardless of what their apparent wisdom is, regardless of what their apparent knowledgeability is. Because the moment you do that, the moment you assume that assumption in your position of relationship as being less than, you open up within yourself, or you open yourself up to this weird undercurrent of keeping yourself small, which is a totally contradictory agenda to your self-development efforts. So those are the two aspects of being grounded I wanted to highlight. The first being establishing your psychological and emotional boundaries, and the second being watching what sort of position of self you assume as you encounter one expert after another, one teacher after another in your journey. There are other aspects of being grounded that relate to your awareness of where you are in relation to certain consensus realities, where you develop your ability to participate in frameworks of all kinds without fully ejecting yourself out of shared platforms. And while this is also an essential aspect of being grounded, if you can firmly establish yourself in the first two I've just talked about, the other aspects of remaining grounded will follow. So a lot of this has to do with your being a fully developed ego, if you will, with a level of internal stability in the knowledge of self, in your knowledge of the various aspects of yourself, of what your boundaries are, of what you're open to, what you're not open to, what you're willing to engage with and what you're unwilling to engage with, and an inherent recognition of your inherent worth and value and validity and all these things. All of these are qualities of being a firmly established self that you will then expand and dismantle and deconstruct and reconstruct with a kind of conscious and intelligent approach.